Alrighty, today I'm going to be smoking up a full rack of ribs. These are St. Louis style spare ribs. Very meaty, full rack, a lot of flavor, good marbling of fat in the meat. So these things are going to smoke up nicely in my Masterbuilt smoker outside. Now, just to let you guys know, I prefer to leave the silver skin on. A lot of people will take the silver skin off or they'll score it. I find that by leaving the silver skin on, the meat retains a lot of its moisture. If I remove it, if I pull the silver skin off, if I score it, a lot of that moisture is going to seep out, and you'll find that the underside of the ribs could be a little bit on the dry side. We're going to be smoking these things low and slow at approximately 225 degrees for about 3 hours. So it's going to have a chance to really retain its juices a lot better if I leave the silver skin on. Okay, let's talk about the spice rub. We're going to be using a mostly brown sugar blend of different spices. The idea is to give a slightly sweet, slightly salty taste to the ribs. And for the majority of the rub, we're going to be using brown sugar. Now in this case, I'm using light brown sugar. You could use dark brown sugar, you could use light brown sugar, whichever one you want, but put a generous amount into the bowl because you want to make sure that you are getting that real sweet, smoky flavor to the ribs. Next up, we're going to drop in some salt. Next up is some black pepper, and you always want to throw in a good amount of black pepper. The basis of any good barbecue is always a good amount of black pepper. Next, we're going to pour in some garlic powder. Now, these basic spices right here are perfect for throwing anything in a smoker or on a grill. You got your brown sugar, you have your salt, you got your black pepper, you have your garlic. Anything else we put in now is going to be for personal taste. Next, we'll put in some paprika for not only color, but for some of that nice dark rich flavor as well. Next up, just a little bit of chipotle powder. Not chili powder, chipotle powder. Next, we'll put in just a little bit of Old Bay seasoning. I love using Old Bay. Great stuff, you can find it in any supermarket. It really adds another dimension of flavor to just about anything you cook it with. A lot of times you'll see me use it in potatoes and in different types of hash, like a ham hash or a corned beef hash. Just another dark, smoky flavor really adds another dimension to whatever you're putting it on. Next up, just a dash of onion powder. Not too much. Don't want to overdo it. Onion powder, a little bit goes a long way. Next, just mix it all up by hand, making sure everything gets turned around. All the bits of brown sugar, I want to make sure get pulverized down. I don't want any big clumps going onto the meat. I want to make sure everything is uniform. If you have a pulse chopper or a food processor or even a small blender, you can put it in there and mix it up just the same. Again, I like doing it by hand because I can really get in there and break up all of that brown sugar. Alright, so the rub is all mixed well together. Got a nice balance of my salty and sweet. I could also taste the other flavors in there as well. Nothing is coming through too much to the point where it's going to really interrupt the flavor profiles from one spice to another. Now, for the rack of ribs, this is a really large rack here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in half so I can place each half on different racks inside of the smoker. This will allow it to make sure that all sides of the meat take on enough smoke, that I'm not going to have one section of it resting up against the side wall of the smoker where it's going to cook unevenly or not enough at all. So we're going to cut this in half. Okay, so I've cut the racks in half. And I'm starting with the silver side down. You want to put the spices and the rub on the bottom side first, so when you flip it over, you could actually get a good amount of rub on the meat side. And if anything falls off on the bone side, it's not so bad. But you always want to make sure that you have enough rub on the meat side. So start by simply sprinkling it over the top. And be liberal with it. Don't worry about it. You're not going to be overdoing it. Be surprised how much of it will fall off in the smoking or grilling process. So you always want to make sure you just pat good enough into it just to make sure you've coated it. That's pretty much what we're doing. We're not really working it into the meat so much. We want it to sit on top of the meat. We're going to let it sit for about an hour or so in the fridge. I'll probably wrap it in some cling wrap just to really work it in. And this is also called marinating. You're marinating it with a dry rub. It's the idea of something that's going to add a flavor profile to the meat. A lot of people think marinating is just with wet products like soy sauce or teriyaki or barbecue sauce or whatnot. But nope, you're actually marinating it when you are coating it in a dry rub. So we've worked this in. Now we're going to turn it over. See how some of it falls off? That's okay, because this is the side that we really want to concentrate a lot of the rub on. So don't be afraid that some of it fell off in the process of flipping it over. And so I'm going to break down some of these lumps over here. Want to make sure that, again, things are nice and even. If you have any lumps that won't break down, they've really solidified well, then just pull them off. You got plenty of rub to work with in the bowl. And so now we're just applying it to this side of the ribs. Again, yes, we're not rubbing it in, we're patting it in. That's what we do here. We're just patting it on, not rubbing. I know they call it a rub, but we're going to just give it a nice pat. Okay, get all areas covered nicely. And now I'm very gently going to place it in the pan for now. I'm going to pause for a second because I need two hands. Okay, so now we're going to take the other half of ribs, rack of ribs, and we're going to place them meat side down on the board. Now there's still some rub from before, from when we were rubbing the other rack. That's okay. It'll get picked up by the bottom side or the meat side of the ribs. So now we're going to take some more of this rub and we're going to place it along the bottom over here. We're just going to rub it in, lightly tapping it, lightly patting it, I should say. Not rubbing it so much. We don't want to rub it into the meat. We want it to stay on the meat. So we're going to just pat it down. Now, sometimes you'll see people coating the meat with olive oil or bacon grease. And, you know, it's hit or miss with that method as far as I'm concerned. I've had some success with it. I've also had it where the oil and the grease was just a little too much and the rub would just slide off and I would just have that oily taste to the meat. This time around, I'm going to try using nothing. Just simply working the rub into the meat. Okay, quick flip over. And now you'll see some of that rub from before that was underneath has made its way onto the surface of the ribs. And we're just going to, again, pat this on. Pat this on. Nice thick coat. Don't worry. Don't think you're using too much. You're actually not. It's not going to over-flavor the meat. A lot of it will eventually drip its way off when the fat in the meat starts to render. That's common. That's normal. And listen, during the actual smoking or grilling process, there's nothing wrong with adding a little more rub if you need to. I'll probably end up just holding some aside just to make sure I have enough, and if I need to, I could always apply a little bit more. It's not the end of the world. I have a tendency when I'm done to keep whatever rub is left over. Any old spice jars that we may have, you know, things that we've used, whether it's the garlic, salt, or pepper, or whatnot, I'll clean them out, dry them up really good, and then I'll put remaining rub in there so I have some for the next time. You know, don't want to waste it if I don't have to. And if I have a mixture that I really like, I'll label it on there. I have my sweet heat rub. I got my all-purpose rub. Today, this is just going to be a regular sweet rub. It's not sweet heat. This is pretty much what I do for my sweet heat rub, but in that rub, I will add cayenne pepper to the blend. All right, so there we go. Got everything patted on nicely. Now I'm going to go and get the saran wrap and wrap it all up. Alrighty, so now both racks of ribs have been fully coated on all sides with the rub. Now I'm going to let them sit in the fridge for a couple of hours so the spices will start to blend into the meat. The meat is still very, very moist, so the spices and seasonings will break down a little, and everything's going to have that nice wet coated look later on. In my next video, I'm going to show you how to smoke the ribs using my Masterbuilt propane smoker. Alright guys, hope this was informative. As always, please leave some comments. Comments, concerns, questions, I would appreciate them all. Alright, talk to you later.